Hi guys!
Hey Hearty Soul, welcome back to another episode of Real Talk. I'm Dr. Nadia a naturopathic doctor, and
I'm Alina, your editor-in-chief at the Hearty Soul and a holistic nutritionist.
Today we're talking about the most uncomfortable, bloating.
Bloating, it can make you feel gross and uncomfortable all day and sluggish, and it's something that we really need to address.
It's true, because everyone knows this feeling. It's not a good feeling. And there's lots of ways to avoid it and even help get rid of it when you do feel bloated.
Yeah.
So, and today is a special episode as well.
Yeah, we actually have a sponsor for this video today. It is by Atrantil, which is a company whose mission it is to promote digestive health. So this company was actually started by a gastroenterologist, Dr. Brown. And he saw that there weren't enough treatments that were effective enough for things like bloating that so many people deal with. So he actually crafted a herbal supplement that is perfect for bloating. And we're actually going to bring him on in about half an hour to actually talk to you guys and to talk to us all about bloating. So stay tuned for that. That's going to be pretty fun.
Yeah, actually I'm really excited to interview him. Really smart guy, and I love to know when people have been passionate about creating their own supplements. So we're going to dive right into that. But stay tuned. We'll be right back.
All right.
And we're back.
Well,
I always feel like we're on a radio show.
I know. And we're back. Dun, 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 dun. We should have a jingle.
I know. Guys, also, I know I always say this every time, but this is absolutely live. So if you're tuning in right now and as we're kind of discussing and questions come up for you guys, or you want to just say hi, or something we've said maybe wasn't clear, or my volume on my computer is going up.
Oopsies.
Right into us. We want to interact. We want to chat with you guys. That's why we have this on live. Otherwise, we would pre-record these and just put them up.
Definitely. So yeah, guys, type in your comments, or you know what, even just say hi to us right now. Give us your name, tell us where you're from, tell us if you've ever had bloating before. Is it something that happens to you every single day? Something that happens once in a while, maybe after an all-you-can-eat buffet?
Or that time of the month.
Yeah. Or you know what, for some people, never at all.
I'd like to meet those people.
Meet those people. I actually did meet those people, and we're going to show you some video footage actually very shortly. We actually took to this, or actually we can roll this now. So we took to the streets of Toronto, and we asked people a little bit about bloating, how often they actually get it, what they actually do to treat it as well. And I actually did meet a girl who says she has never had bloating before.
Okay. Oh yes,
so
right.
She was superhuman. So watch out for her. Let's take a look. Hi guys, this is Alina, and we're here on the streets of Toronto for the Hearty Soul. We're asking people the uncomfortable question, do you feel bloated, and what do you do about it? So let's see what they have to say. Have you ever dealt with bloating?
Yes.
Yeah. I feel bloated right now. Yeah, I don't have bloating or anything.
If I go all you can eat sushi every time.
Does it happen really often, or just when you're going out?
No, it's just when I eat a lot.
Not very often. I try to not eat terrible food all the time.
Yeah, obviously certain points in the month I would feel it more than other points.
Have you ever recognized any food triggers or any reasons for your bloating?
I eat a lot of pasta.
I'm not so used to the North American diet, so a lot of cheese, a lot of dairy, so I often feel bloated.
It's 2 in the morning and you want to get smoked poutine, and either that night or the next morning you just feel like trash.
Any remedies that you use right now afterwards?
My thinking is all you can eat sushis right now. I'll go for green teas.
Ginger tea is good. I've heard apple cider vinegar is a good one, so I've started drinking a little bit of that in the morning.
And any tips for people overall, just to feel less uncomfortable?
I think you have to keep moving, and most important, just eat plant-based food and don't eat a lot of processed food.
Do you ever take any medicine for it?
No.
No, I don't think I've ever actually tried any remedies.
Take care of yourself. You deserve it.
And welcome back, guys. Hope you enjoyed that Q&A with the people on the
Also,
street of
I'd
Toronto.
love to point out that this was Alina's first time actually doing the question.
Yeah.
How was that?
You know what, guys? When you're on the streets trying to ask people about whether they feel bloated, it's hard enough if you're just trying to get someone's attention to give them a coupon. But when you're like, "Hi, miss, are you bloated? Want to talk about it?"
It actually, like, it never ceases to amaze me that people are super open to go on camera to talk about their, you know,
It's
body
funny
concerns.
Because some people are so open and they're like, "Yes, this is so interesting because I deal with it all the time." Some people are just like, "Don't look at me, you annoying human." So you feel like dirt, pretty much, but it's also fun, and you get a lot of great responses from people too.
Yeah, no, there was a lot of really, I liked how they both mentioned two important causes, and we're gonna go through the list of what causes bloating, things we can do to treat bloating, and then most importantly, something called SIBO, which is something you guys may or may not have heard about before. But I liked how the one guy mentioned it's specifically when he eats all you can eat sushi.
Yes. Definitely.
Definitely happens to me too.
It's where you're overeating, right? You force yourself to eat more than normal, and you're gonna feel bloated. So
absolutely,
I feel like that one, and anything to do with food. I think food triggers in general. People sort of understood that connection. They're like, oh, if I eat badly, I know I'm gonna be bloated.
Yeah.
But when I pushed for other questions from people as well, or other reasons, people were struggling. They're like, actually, I don't know what else
The one
causes
girl
bloating.
noticed that it was cyclical and hormonal.
Yes,
so at
she
her
did.
time, like as she goes through her menstrual cycle.
Yeah, women will usually.
She didn't say those words, but that's what was implied.
Cyclical, yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. So it's interesting, but we are going to dive into so many other causes that it can be just on top of food.
Yeah, because the tricky thing about bloating too is bloating can sometimes, especially if you've had like prolonged feelings of being bloated, often you can actually feel that you're gaining weight, that it's weight gain, and not necessarily just retention of gas or fluids.
Tell the difference. You're just struggling to put your jeans on.
Right.
You're like, wait, what is this though? I'm eating well, I'm exercising, so why do I still?
Right.
Yeah, people confuse it for belly fat.
It
essentially,
can
but
be.
sometimes it's actually just bloating.
And for a lot of the time when people do have sensitivities or triggers that they're not aware of, and they actually end up taking the steps to reduce that and remove bloating, they realize that they actually start losing weight and feel better and more comfortable in their clothes, etc.
Definitely. So it's really interesting.
Yeah.
Let's actually define a bit, maybe for these guys too, what bloating is, because it's interesting too. Some people, when I asked on the streets, do you bloat? Some people were actually confused. Like, what do you exactly mean with bloating too? So, guys, essentially, it's if you're feeling an uncomfortable kind of distension in your abdomen, some discomfort.
It's like you just had a big turkey dinner.
Yeah.
And you're just, it's like, you feel almost like a hardness too, a firmness in your abdomen. Can be also a lot of flatulence can happen as well. So you're burping a lot, or flatulence as in you're farting a lot. Not the medical term.
And you can have a lot of pain too sometimes with that
cramping.
flatulence. Yeah, definitely. So it's very uncomfortable, and you can just feel sluggish and tired too. Because I know some clients, after every meal that they have, they feel so
energy
tired.
suck.
And energy suck.
Yeah.
So that's an amazing, that's an amazing term for it.
Which is also, okay guys, because there's also a big difference between edema and bloating.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because they get very confused. So can you define, I guess, what edema is for people?
Yeah, so edema essentially is fluid retention in your tissues, and often that's actually seen more in your distal areas of your body. So your feet, your legs, your hands. This is where we can see a fluid accumulation, and edema can actually be pretty serious. So often what that means is, you know, your key organs, such as your liver or your kidneys or your heart, are not able to circulate and regulate your water retention appropriately. So then you start having this accumulation. So there's actually something called pitting edema, and I'm not sure if any of you guys have done this before or known.
Is that where you press in, right? And if it stays pitted?
If you guys are curious if you may have or are suffering from edema, you can go to where you feel your swollen body parts are. So again, usually in your legs, feet, or hand. Feet are a huge one because it's the farthest away from your heart where the circulation happens. And you want to just press in for a couple moments with light pressure.
Okay.
And you want to release, and you actually want to see if there's a
test right
dent
now.
that stays there. So if there is a noticeable dent that stays there after the pressure, do you have edema?
No, I do not have edema. I
Okay.
just have, I'm just making myself red.
Okay, edema free. But and I mention this
Yeah.
because it is a key differentiation
Yeah.
between just bloating and fluid accumulation. Very different.
So I think a good distinction for our audience too would be, think of bloating more as trapped gas.
Right.
A lot of the time, right? It's trapped air due to whatever reason it is, and we're going to go through all the reasons, but it's more of that trapped air versus that fluid retention.
Yes,
in a way.
and also think bloating central, abdominal, and fluid retention more hands, legs, feet. So
Okay.
outer areas versus inner central area.
Totally makes sense.
Yeah, and just a side note, if you guys do notice you have some edema after watching this right now, that's definitely something you want to work with a healthcare practitioner to resolve.
Yeah,
because
that
that is
makes
not, excessive salt intake is something too that can happen with fluid retention, but if you are noticing pitting edema, that's pretty serious. So you want to make sure that you're going and working with a healthcare provider to get that resolved.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. So let's talk about that trapped air and that gas then.
Yes.
So we're going to talk about it, guys, in so many different levels that it can happen, the reasons why. But we can start off first by talking about reasons that are common to, I think, most people. So simple eating patterns or I guess food patterns that we have that lead to the air getting trapped.
Right.
So to start off with, I guess we can think about something as simple as eating food too quickly.
Oh my gosh, I'm so guilty
This
for
is
this.
at the all-you-can-eat sushi. We're like, I want all the sushi right now, so fast, and you're just gulping in
Inhaling.
excess amounts of air. Yeah, you're essentially inhaling your food and all this extra air that's going down, which is going to lead to that bloating.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so another big thing, and this is actually something that I work
Yeah.
with my patients a lot who are trying to improve
Yeah.
weight loss, is distraction eating.
Yes.
So mindless eating will absolutely, no matter what, make you end up eating quicker and more than you intended when you began.
Yeah.
So this means if you are on your phone, you're on your computer, you're watching TV, even reading a paper, literally doing anything else besides eating
Focusing on your food.
is distracted eating. And I mean, at a social event, obviously it's difficult because if you're sitting down, you're going out for dinner with a
Don't
friend.
talk to me right now.
Right, like you're gonna,
It's food time.
it can be difficult, but there needs to be a pattern of behavior where
Yeah.
people start to realize that they need to actively chew their food
Yeah.
and swallow their food
Yeah.
and slow down.
So it's interesting because there's distracted eating, but there's also mindless eating when you're in a state of stress or chronic stress. Because when you're eating socially with someone, you're in your rest and digest mode, right? You have your fight or flight mode, which we've talked about before in our adrenal fatigue episode, and then there's rest and digest when your body's like, okay, we're not stressed right now. You don't need to run or flee from anything. So we can direct energy towards your digestive system, towards repairing of cells. So that's the other thing that happens too. If you're someone who works at your desk, who eats at your desk all the time, you're in a state of stress. You're like, oh my God, I have to hand this in before the deadline. At the same time, your body's not going to focus on digestion then.
Because most of the time, you're not taking a lunch break, meaning that you have other stuff to do and you want to finish it as fast as possible.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's just not.
It just leads to indigestion.
Yes.
And more bloating, more gas.
And honestly, overconsumption. Because half the time when you're mindlessly eating, you're not paying attention to your body's natural hunger cues, which are telling you that you're actually satisfied.
Yeah.
Which is a huge issue for people. So, easy, quick tip: chew your food. Count at least 20 times per bite. I guarantee you won't be able to do this. And they actually have they have these spoons or utensils that vibrate. Okay, so they remind you to chew their food.
To chew?
Yes.
Oh, that's so funny.
Yes.
I've never actually chewed my food, I think 20 times, but
It's
5, 6.
It is actually even 10 times is difficult, and you will find that you feel like a turtle. Okay. It will be as slow as molasses. If you're eating meals in less than 5 minutes, you're eating too quick.
Cool.
If you're eating meals in less than 15 minutes, to be honest, I think you're also eating a little too quick.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah,
The
so
meal should
that
be longer.
quick eating and inhaling and shoveling of food is definitely not only going to be leading
Yep.
to discomfort and poor digestion and
Yeah.
bloating.
Yeah.
Also could be leading to overeating. So overeating can also be
Yeah.
create bloating
Yeah.
and discomfort.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So then, what's interesting, you talked
What is
about,
interesting?
I always say this to
I
you,
know.
whenever I have a thought, I think I've noticed it's my thing. I keep saying what's interesting is, when you talked about people listening to their intuition and their own body's cues, you have to think about the types of foods you're eating too.
Absolutely. So this is an excellent segue
Yeah.
into another point.
Yeah. For some people, they notice when they eat too many lentils, for example, or
Yeah.
chickpeas, they are bloated. Some people can't handle cruciferous vegetables that much.
Yep.
They get bloated. For me personally, I tried the raw diet once. Works really well for some other people.
Yeah.
I was so bloated and gassy on the raw diet. I need steamed and cooked food. Maybe it's my heritage or ethnicity, which doesn't allow me to eat that much raw food.
Fair.
But
Dairy's a huge
dairy
one.
as well.
Likely because most people are intolerant, so that means
Yeah.
that they lack the digestive enzymes
Yeah.
to actually break it down. And that's just not a good scene.
Yeah, you definitely want to pay attention to what things trigger that bloating for you. There are enzymes. It doesn't mean you have to definitely give up some of those foods. You can take additional carbohydrate-based enzymes
Yeah.
for beans and so on and
To
so
be
forth.
honest, carbohydrates for me make me feel bloated.
Okay.
So when I have a lot of especially refined carbohydrates, it definitely makes me feel bloated.
Well,
Or
that's-
any fried
yeah.
foods. Any fried or
Ah.
greasy foods
Okay.
will automatically make me feel bloated afterwards.
Because that leads to more water retention too, I believe, right? When
Salty.
you have salty and sweet, actually very high levels of sugar
Yeah.
in refined carbs
Yeah.
or just sugar on its own boosts your insulin, and more of that insulin creates water retention in the body
Right.
as well. So there's also that link.
Hypertension.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Also, we
So
have a
definitely
shout
those
out.
things.
I wanted to say hi
Yeah.
to Tracy.
Hi, Tracy.
Hi, Tracy. She says hello.
Thank you. Hello.
Hi, Sarah Shu, with an emoji of a happy face. My
Hi.
favorite emoji. Actually, my other favorite emoji right now is the woman with the hand like this. That's
I have no idea what that
Yeah.
one is, but that's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. So
And then
that's-
we actually have Dee.
Okay.
Hey Dee. Dee's
Hi.
just actually mentioning she gets a lot of gas after eating, but it's hard to expel and very uncomfortable. So actually that is a common
Yeah.
symptom.
Definitely.
She had a hiatal hernia repair 2 months ago, and it
Ah.
was all fine even 2 weeks ago. Okay, so she actually had some structural changes done.
Yeah.
And actually, when they do surgeries like that, especially if it's a laparoscopic-based surgery, which means that they use tiny little instruments to make incisions, to do repairs, there can be trapped gas that ends up, because they end up using
Yeah.
gas and different
Yeah.
drugs and pharmaceuticals when they're doing the surgery, and that gas can be released over time and can also be very uncomfortable for patients. So
Oh.
especially patients who have had bariatric surgeries,
Okay.
that can be
So it's
very
just one of those
uncomfortable.
side effects that unfortunately just do happen.
It can definitely happen, yeah.
Okay.
But good to be aware of.
Yeah, definitely.
And Louisa, hello from
okay.
Sydney.
Hi.
Oh, I want
from Sydney?
I want to do an
No, don't do the Australian accent.
so badly, but I will
She's
save
done it
you all.
before.
I will save you all. Down under. Okay.
Okay, cool. So guys, just to recap. Okay, we talked about chewing more slowly, not mindlessly eating, avoiding your food
Food
intolerances and food triggers. Things like chewing gum sometimes as well, or excess carbonated drinks can
Oh
also
yeah,
lead
of course.
to some of that bloating too.
Gassiness.
Gassiness, but okay. So that's your dietary and eating patterns that we've talked about. Let's talk a little bit about hormonal stuff too.
Yeah, so, and this is where it gets interesting because hormonal isn't necessarily all about bloating, but it can lead to constipation.
Yeah. So I guess
Sorry.
why this happens, you guys may notice as well during our menstrual cycle, as estrogen and progesterone sort of go up, because of those hormonal changes, women do feel a little bit more constipated sometimes, and there's that slower gastric emptying, and that leads to, obviously, you feel a bit backed up, a bit bloated, and unfortunately, that's just something that will happen at that time of the month, but there are things you can do to help feel less bloated, definitely.
For sure. And
Yeah.
that's also where you want to watch if you're coupling that hormonal trigger with also your dietary triggers. That's going to be a double whammy. It's not going to feel good.
Yeah.
And for most women, especially depending on your cycle and your own premenstrual syndrome symptoms, you'll probably have cravings. and you'll be eating a little bit irregularly closer to your cycle. So you'll have this urge to almost go for these bloating foods while
make
you're
it worse.
already feeling.
Let's try to make it worse.
Exactly. While you're already feeling not your best and maybe having some water retention due to your hormone fluctuations.
Definitely.
So thinking about that as a baseline is definitely important. Another really important thing to remember is any women who are actually on an oral contraceptive pill, different pills have different variations of hormones, and it may be a matter of talking to your physician of seeing which one is right for you. Because I know that even personally, I have had many friends who have had to go on a different from their original prescribed OCP because the original one was leading to a lot of weight gain and water retention.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And any constipation with that as well for those guys, or?
I don't specifically remember that. It was really much more
Just the water retention.
a lot of water retention and a lot of bloating. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. So I guess, guys, what you can do, like Nadia said, you definitely want to not reach for the tub of ice cream.
Yeah.
Or that salty packet of chips.
Right.
You definitely actually want to try to eat more mindfully as well at that time.
Reduce sugar, reduce refined carbohydrates. That will be one of your best friends. Also, if you break out, so if you have hormonal breakouts during your cycle as well, reducing these things are not only going to help with your bloating, but they're going to help you not break out in your skin because you're not going to have those insulin spikes, which your skin does not like.
Yeah. And you know what? Some other things that could help too is exercise.
Absolutely.
Number one.
And drinking water.
Drinking water actually helps with bloating too, which seems counterintuitive.
I know.
Yeah.
It's true. Drinking more water.
Yeah, definitely. And that's going to help with cramps too, so it's all great. Okay, so those actually, I wanted to briefly mention too, some diuretics maybe that in like a herbal tea form that are sometimes very helpful for women with bloating as well. So things like dandelion leaf and is more of a diuretic, I believe, and dandelion root helps with constipation as well.
Yeah. So dandelion, the leaves.
The leaves is more for the bloating, but dandelion root would just help anyway with your digestion if you are feeling constipated. So you could do maybe a mixture.
Herba ursi.
Yes.
Zea mays. Juniper.
There's so many
Found
things.
in gin. Not recommended. But I mean, in a pinch.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's several different diuretic herbs that
definitely.
you can help.
Nettle.
Nettle's pretty good.
Nettle's a really good one. So there's simple ways, guys, just taking a couple of cups of those tea in a day as well when you have PMS can definitely help.
But as per usual, and we always say this, you want to start with your basics. Start with your dietary and
100%.
lifestyle habits. Slow down with your eating. Watch your choices.
Yeah.
And also be aware, because a lot of girls also aren't really tracking their cycle, I feel like.
Yeah.
So then they're like, where is this coming from? What is happening?
Why am I bloated?
Why do I feel this way?
Yeah.
So even just using a little app on your phone and tracking your cycle can help you be a little bit more mindful.
Clue is the one I use, which is great.
Oh.
Yeah, it's really fun. Gives you a clue.
Cool.
Anyway.
All right, enough of the PMS. Sorry,
yeah,
guys.
sorry for the men watching.
So we've got eating habits, we've got diet, we've got hormonal fluctuations. What else do we have?
So we are talking actually about digestive problems too, which is where we're going to get into SIBO very briefly.
Yes.
But let's just talk about some more foundational stuff too. So when I talk about digestive issues, there's two things I notice a lot of the times with clients. It's funny, nearly I would say 90% of the clients I have dealt with all have low stomach acid.
Oh, okay.
So stomach acid, as a reminder for you guys as well, it is obviously that acid in your stomach. And it basically helps break down your protein. So it's sort of the starting point of digestion, and you want that to be strong. And now if you don't have enough stomach acid, what happens is, let's say you eat a steak, there's not enough stomach acid, or it's very weak. It's going to take time for that steak to break down, and in the meantime, it's just going to sit there and ferment and off gas, which is what leads to that sort of burping and belching and feeling sluggish and tired after meals, especially things like steak and potatoes, and you're just like, oh my God.
Heavier, harder to digest meals.
Definitely. So low stomach acid, and we have a lot of articles on this on the Hearty Soul too that people can check out, and there's simple tests and ways to see if you do have low stomach acid.
Yes, Sarah?
Yeah, for sure.
So that's a great one.
So that's a good one, yeah.
And these are, so guys, moving into this category of more chronic digestive issues.
Yeah.
This is where bloating is like your number one worst enemy. I'm going to cough. I'm really sorry. I'm going to hide my
That's
mouth.
okay. I'll just smile at the camera while you cough.
I know. But this is so, pay attention to this section. If bloating is something that you are much more chronically feeling and you just can't pinpoint it, you haven't triggered it down, or you haven't pinpointed it down to a food trigger or hormones, which are, you know, more once in a while. This is something where you're like, I am constantly gassy. I'm constantly uncomfortable. I notice my stomach makes a lot of gurgling noises, or burgabormy, I believe is the word.
I have no idea if that's the word, but that's great. It's a
where
fun
there's
word.
a lot of gurgling and just sounds that your stomach is making. It's unsettled.
Okay. Okay. So definitely look at your your stomach acid then for sure if you have those symptoms Nadia has mentioned. And the other thing too is digestive insufficiency. So along with our stomach acid, we have digestive enzymes that help break down our food. Now, a lot of the time, if someone's having a very high plant-based diet with a lot of fruits and veggies, and you're getting enough of that in a day, they come with their own enzymes because they're live foods, guys. They're living foods, which have enzymes in them to help you break them down already. But if you're eating a lot of dead food, thank you for the water top-up. Dead food. Dead food meaning a lot of processed food, refined food, like your bagels and your wraps and so on and so forth.
Colorless, lifeless food.
Yes, those ones, dead foods.
Dead food, I like that.
So those don't come with those enzymes, right? They're killed off in processing. So when you're constantly eating too much of that food, you're having to dip into your body's own internal reserve of its enzymes to keep breaking down food.
Which is so interesting that you call it dead food, because then that's the opposite of living food, like our fermented foods.
Yeah, that's a great one.
Which have active enzymes in them, actually.
And
that
probiotics.
Help, and probiotics within them. So little living organisms that actually help balance gut
exactly.
bacterial homeostasis.
Yes, exactly. So stomach acid and enzymes, I think, as a foundation, is really great to address off the bat. But then we have some conditions to talk about as well. So
IBS, definitely. We have IBD, so Crohn's, ulcerative colitis, celiac is another big one.
Definitely. If you have something even like a parasite infection as well, that can cause a lot of bloating. Not fun, but not fun whatsoever. But again, that's so all these things that we're mentioning, like your IBS, your celiac, etc. Those are things that you definitely want to go talk to a practitioner more so about. That's not something you can have some warm lemon water or dandelion root tea and expect it to go away, or your bloating to reduce. You need a proper protocol that's like multi-pronged and have that given to you by someone. And now the last thing that we are actually going to talk about too, and we're going to invite on our guest, the gastroenterologist, Dr. Brown. We are going to talk about SIBO. Small intestinal bacterial overgrowth.
Small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. So literally, your beautiful little gut biome, which has a balance of healthy bacteria, has started to overgrow. Not good.
Not fun whatsoever.
So we are actually going to call in. We have Dr. Brown with us. A little gut biome, which we're so technologically advanced here.
I know.
Okay, wait. Dr. Brown. Pardon? Call in. We have Dr. Brown with us. In a little gut biome, which Tamara, we're so technologically advanced. Hello, Tamara.
I know. Hi.
She comments, I can literally see my stomach moving from time to time. Someone told me it is gas. It reminds me of when I was pregnant with the baby moving. That is crazy. Is it really gas, worms, or what? So that's, I can't possibly answer that for you, but there's a really good chance it is gas. But okay, I think we have Dr. Brown. Hi.
Oh, he's here. Okay.
Dr. Brown. Oh, no. Crazy.
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Is it really gas, worms, or what? So that's, I can't possibly answer that for you, but there's a really good chance it is gas. Okay, so Dr. Brown. But okay, so I think we have Dr. Brown. Hi. Annoyingly talking.
Oh, he's here. Okay.
Can you mute your live stream?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Is it really gas, worms, or
doing
what?
everything that Tim's told me to do here. Can you hear me?
I can't possibly answer that for you, but there's a...
Okay, hang with us, guys.
Is that what I sound like? That is awful.
It's fun to hear your own voice.
I do not hear my own voice very often, so that's awful. Dr. Brown, hold on just for a moment. We're going to get our wonderful tech team to figure out what's going on.
In the meantime, tell us your bloating stories, guys.
Yeah, so actually Lyra, hi Lyra, whose last name is Salt. Interesting. She mentions the #1 reason for bloating, in her opinion, is usually gluten, dairy, and processed foods. And as we mentioned in the beginning, so always looking at foods first as triggers is a good place to start.
Yeah.
So I think I got a thumbs up. We're good?
We're good to go. Okay. Hello, Dr. Brown.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Oh my goodness, it's fantastic.
Okay, awesome. So, Dr. Brown, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, first of all, I've been listening to both of you. That was a fantastic run around about everything about bloating. That was super, super cool, and a lot of interesting stuff. And mostly, Alina, when you eat sushi, I want to see you do this, that you say you get so bloated after you just gobble it all up. That's
I do try to put ginger on top, but.
Just gobbles it up.
Well, for your viewers listening, my name is Dr. Kenneth Brown. I'm a board-certified gastroenterologist in Dallas, Texas. And I've been doing clinical research for the last 10 years. And my passion is in irritable bowel syndrome, inflammatory bowel disease, leaky gut, and as we're going to talk about, a little bit of bacterial overgrowth known as SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. As you mentioned briefly at the beginning of the show, one of the reasons why I have so much passion for it is I was doing pharmaceutical research for a very long time, and I realized that there was a natural way to help all these people where the pharmaceutical industry was kind of missing the mark on it. And I was able to actually develop something that helps people.
That's awesome.
Okay, amazing. Thank you. And also, just thanks for being with us on this show. We're really excited to just dive into SIBO.
Oh no, trust me, after the first half hour that I've watched, I'm thrilled to be here to watch you guys. You're very funny and it's really cool.
We try to keep it entertaining.
Stop. So actually, because I feel a lot of viewers and people in general aren't actually familiar with what SIBO is. So in your own words, can you kind of describe what it is and what some of the symptoms someone would feel if they had it?
So what I tell most of my patients is this. Essentially, we have our microbiome, like you were discussing, our friendly organisms. Those organisms should generally live in your colon. That's where most of your microbiome lives to help you. You have over 100 trillion bacteria in your colon with over 1,000 species. It's a genome within a genome. But in certain cases, if you get sick, take antibiotics, possibly your diet, like you were talking about, the refined carbs and all that stuff, that has a lot of different things that can affect your intestines, and it shocks the small intestine where you shouldn't have lots of bacteria growing. So let me just say that it isn't that bacteria are good or bad, it's that SIBO is when bacteria is growing where it shouldn't be. So you normally have a free-flowing stream. Think of it like a crystal stream, and then all of a sudden you dam it up. In that area, you've now created somewhat of what we're going to call like a sewer pipe or a cesspool. Then bacteria start to grow, and then whenever you eat, and I love that both of you had mentioned that the thing, Nadia, I believe that you said that starchy foods make you bloat quite a bit. Well, one of the things is that bacteria love starchy foods. So when you eat, the bacteria start to break down the food before you can, and then that actually creates a lot of bloating and discomfort. Once that happens, it's a perfect environment to allow other bacteria to come, one of them being something that produces methane. And what the methane does is it slows everything down and then allows more bacteria to grow. So essentially what SIBO is a sewer pipe that over time becomes a bigger sewer pipe in your intestines. I know, it sounds
It's
nasty.
a great analogy,
No, but
actually.
it
I think
is.
it's good because I'm visualizing it in my head.
I know, because that's how many of our other body systems work, right? When hypertension starts happening and plaque formation, that's when a normal, well-oiled highway is dammed up, and then the flow of traffic is disrupted. So similar process.
Very, very, very similar. And these processes, now I'm very biased in this, but I personally believe that all health begins and ends in the gut. And Alina, I think that as a RD or as a dietitian, you could probably agree with that we can really affect our health through this. So those plaques and things can actually be prevented by improving your diet and doing different things. But all of it ends up being a very vicious cycle. Most health processes or chronic disease becomes a vicious cycle. So.
And it's also hard for people even to recognize that there is a problem and that the cycle needs to be broken. So actually, Dr. Brown, how common would you say SIBO is in the general public?
Oh, so let's back it up a little bit. Let's talk about how common the diagnosis of irritable bowel syndrome is. So many of your listeners may have either looked up irritable bowel or have been told by a doctor. My typical patient is somebody that comes in and they either say, do I have irritable bowel? Or I was told I have irritable bowel, what is it? The funny thing is, irritable bowel is a trash can diagnosis. If you have abdominal pain and it gets better with going to the restroom, then you get labeled as irritable bowel if all your tests are normal. And I'm traditionally talking about allopathic doctors here, where you go to a gastroenterologist, you do an endoscopy, colonoscopy, everything's normal. As you're in recovery, the doctor pats you on the head and says, good news, it's all normal, you just have irritable bowel.
It's like an umbrella term.
It's an umbrella term. Exactly. You can call it umbrella. I call it trash can. We throw it in the trash can.
Trash can, I haven't heard that before.
It's much better than my one.
Well, the reason why I say trash can is because once you throw it in the trash can, you never look at it again. Once somebody gets labeled as IBS and they walk into another doctor, they say I have IBS, then they blame everything on IBS. So 30 years ago, when people were developing ulcer disease, it was felt that ulcers were caused by stress, anxiety. You're a type A personality. And then a brilliant Australian gastroenterologist figured out that it was actually caused by H. pylori, a bacteria. We're seeing that same paradigm shift go on right now in my field, where all these people that are labeled with IBS, we go, no, wait a minute. I think it's caused by bacteria also. And the whole SIBO process can explain that. So the long-winded answer to your question is, most of the people that I see with IBS have SIBO, is what it comes down to.
So it's really underdiagnosed, and a lot of people aren't fully educated on the root issues that are happening with their IBS as a primary diagnosis.
Correct. And it's not just underdiagnosed with the patients not being diagnosed at it. This paradigm shift is taking a very slow time to reach the doctors that for 30 years have been treating IBS with antidepressants. Instead of, let's get to the root cause. That's where I was 10 years ago. I was doing clinical research for big pharma, and we were looking at different products to help people with IBS. And different doctors, the guy that really kind of came up with the whole concept, Dr. Mark Pimentel out of California, had all these animal models where he showed that if you put an animal through a significant amount of stress, they could end up having, I saw your face right there. It's really like I asked him, how'd you do that? He's like,
How'd you stress an animal?
But it has to happen. It's important research, I understand.
But it's not as hard as you think. You basically have a bunch of mice there. You hand them some IRS audits. It stresses animals out the same thing.
Taxes.
Same thing, taxes, whole nine yards. So what he could show is that 20% of the animals that actually went under duress or stress or had an infection would end up developing these chronic situations. We were talking at the time, and he said, the problem is that anybody that has bloating with constipation, we can't help right now, because I was doing a drug study for him, or with him. It ended up being Xifaxan, which is one of the drugs that are used for IBS with diarrhea. But what he showed was that people that develop IBS due to bacteria producing methane, so that's IBS with bloating and constipation, wouldn't get better because our modern day antibiotics do not work on the type of bacteria that produces the methane, which is known as an Archaeobacter. And it's getting a little technical here, but that's the root cause. Bottom line for anybody listening is, if you bloat with constipation, more than likely you're producing methane. And it's the methane that's creating the major issue. That's when go ahead.
Oh, no, sorry. I was going to say you're talking about the methane, and I believe for SIBO you can do a breath test to check those levels of methane. Now, is that how you diagnose patients as well?
So that is a great question.
Yeah.
About diagnosing SIBO. The diagnosis of SIBO, unfortunately, we do not have a gold standard.
Okay.
Gold standards have to be matched against a control. So it was felt that the gold standard would be like a culture of the small bowel, but that doesn't work very well. So the easiest, kind of best test that we have is a breath test, as you were mentioning. And what that is you take in sugars, and then you measure hydrogen and methane levels over a period of time.
Okay.
There was a recent consensus statement that just came out where it basically says, it's kind of the best test that we have, but it's not that sensitive and not that specific. So in my own practice, I do use breath tests all the time because it's what we have.
Okay.
But if you walk like a duck, quack like a duck, look like a duck, I treat you like SIBO. So if you come in and you say, after I eat starchy foods, I bloat. And when you talked about earlier in the segment, you were talking about bloating and different types of bloating. I loved how you guys addressed that. You talked about edema, which is fluid retention. You talked about the monthly cycle bloating, which is a totally different type. The type of bloating that I'm talking about is if you eat some starchy foods and you end up looking 4 months pregnant 30 minutes after you eat, we know that you're producing a lot of internal gas, and that gas is being produced in the small intestine.
Which is actually
and that's the root cause.
thing to think of, that these living organisms are actually breaking down food and then releasing their own little gases.
They're really powerful.
And that is what is accumulating, and that is what they're actually trying to read off your breath during this test. And actually,
correct.
Yeah, and I love, Dr. Brown, how you mentioned, you know, it's not just about performing a test and then, you know, arbitrarily saying like, oh, you're ruled in or you're ruled out. You take in the entire history and symptoms of a patient. You can use a test like that to help guide you if it's necessary, but ultimately, if someone is presenting a certain way, then they get treated that way.
Exactly. And so with the breath tests in my practice, I like to use them after they fail something. So we can look at this. You can learn a lot from it. When you look at the consensus statement from these experts that have looked at this, they basically say, take everything with a grain of salt. It's the best that we have, but, you know, view the patient as a holistic situation.
100%.
Don't just hang your hat on one test or another test.
Right.
Now I'm curious, with SIBO, is that something that allopathic doctors actually recognize right now?
It is certainly a diagnosis that many allopathic doctors are coming to grips with. I will tell you this, that I think that the nutrition community and the naturopathic community have embraced this much more rapidly. And it's been very interesting to sit there and talk to a lot of colleagues. SIBO, certainly when I go to my gastroenterology meetings, most of the academic doctors are, you know, they totally understand that. But as we all understand, if you've been practicing for 30 years and you've done it a certain way, these are giant warships in mentality. They turn very slowly sometimes. So what I really what I've really embraced about dealing with nutritionists, dietitians, and naturopathic doctors and people that are functional medicine doctors is that they are willing to believe that anything is possible. So if I come to you with an idea, you go, you know what? If it makes physiologic sense, I'll at least entertain it, instead of just shutting down immediately and being like, no, that's not what I do. So I'm getting a lot of my colleagues to come around slowly, and yeah, it's been interesting. And I think that the functional medicine movement is growing so rapidly. I don't know how it is in Canada, but here in the United States, the functional medicine movement is you're gaining a ton of steam, and I think one of the reasons is because there's a demand for it. Patients.
Yeah, it's definitely growing here rapidly as well. I think we're seeing a lot of MDs here actually starting to embrace functional medicine as well.
Green allopaths, as I like to call them. Yeah.
Oh, is that what it is? Green allopath?
Yeah.
A lot more acceptance, and as an ND, especially, I mean, I'm a firm believer of having a healthcare team, right? Where you have, you know, you have your dentist, you have your GP, you have a specialist if you have a condition, and then you have an acupuncturist or a naturopathic doctor, so that you can have a team of people to help you with the needs that you have, and then that team is able to coordinate and talk and work together.
Yeah.
And that's an ideal situation, and it's more rare to find, but when I have worked with physicians who are open, it's putting the patient first, and it's being patient central, which I think is the number one way. But not to go down that trail of worms, I also wanted to just learn a little bit more about kind of what predisposes someone to bacterial overgrowth. So and I know, as you mentioned before, kind of it all starts in the gut, and even our immune system is very, very largely related to the gut, and the gut is kind of our little second brain. But I'd love to hear from you of kind of what predisposes someone to having SIBO.
So if you look up SIBO and you go to medical literature, you're going to find the very, very typical things, which would be people that have certain medical conditions will be predisposed to it. So let's talk about scleroderma, where they may have these diverticulum in the small bowel. So these are the same diverticulum that we talk about. Everybody knows somebody who's had diverticulitis at one time. These are little pockets. Well, you can imagine in the small intestine, bacteria get there and then they start growing. That's one functional thing. If you have any type of,
and then they nest.
yeah, exactly. So then you also have other structural issues where you have post-surgical problems. Then you have certain diseases like diabetes, where you have motility issues with high sugar content. That is the minority of people that actually get SIBO. Most of the people that I see are the ones that have either had an infection, and so what happens is you can get sick. A classic story is when somebody will say, man, I went to Mexico like 5 years ago and I got Montezuma's revenge and I've just never been the same. What happened?
That's true.
That's
Never
true.
well since is like a term we learned when we were charting.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So those people, what we've learned with those people is that we used to call that post-infectious IBS, and now we realize that those people, your body's own immune system tried to fight the infection and produced antibodies that end up screwing up your, let's call it electrical towers in your intestine. So now you end up with an area that doesn't move well. Free-flowing stream gets dammed up and now becomes a little area that bacteria can grow. That's certainly a very, very common way. And then the other thing is that if you take antibiotics, don't get me started on that. We're messing everything up by that.
Some
And
people,
then-
Actually an epidemic. So antibiotic resistance and overuse is a really serious
whole 9
issue.
yards.
Yeah.
Yeah, if we, okay, so I'll, just as for, if you have any practitioners listening, because I'm starting to get on this, this belief of this, that, you know, we see a pregnant woman and you go, oh, well, she's eating for 2 and she's protecting that.
Yeah.
All of us are eating for 100 trillion bacteria. We are eating for 100 trillion. Those bacteria are here to help us if we give them what they need.
Right.
Yeah.
So the one thing we shouldn't do is drop these ginormous H-bombs on them and destroy them with bacteria. I mean, I'm sorry, with antibiotics. So we have a tendency to have these people. So if you get sick, take antibiotics. And then the final thing that Dr. Pimentel proved was if you go through a really stressful situation, you can actually shock your intestines through, you mentioned it earlier, the fight or flight or the adrenal fatigue, any way you want to frame it. If you go through something like that, you're going to shock your intestines and allow the bacteria to grow. So the most common ways really aren't even those things that we read about in the medical textbooks. It's the day-to-day stuff.
and could you actually talk a little bit about leaky gut as well? Because I feel like it's somewhere in there where you were explaining about antibodies building up as well.
Oh boy. Okay, so
Let's go down this path. Let's open this can of worms.
Cole's notes, because I want to learn a little bit. I want to learn about what remedies and why you formulated what you want, what you did. Sorry. So Cole's notes on that, and then we'll keep going forward with us.
100%.
okay, I'll cover leaky gut really briefly, but that's like saying, you know, cover what I think is one of the most important topics affecting general health right now in like 30 seconds.
Okay.
All right. So
He's up for the mission.
Let's do it.
if you say leaky gut to an allopathic doctor, or if you go to one of my colleagues, you know, basically they've got their head in the sand. Leaky gut is an internet term.
Yeah.
So that just pretty much says that you've been doing your homework on the internet, and most people will kind of ignore that. If you talk to a patient that's been reading about leaky gut, they describe it as this huge intestinal hole, like you eat something and it just falls through these gaping, porous holes, like one of those hoses that sort of, hydrates all your shrubs when you put them out, or your foundation. Somewhere in between lies the answer. And the bottom line is this: the intestinal barrier, or the tight junction, is an exquisitely complex thing. It's well known that in biology, that if something is very complex, it's extremely important. And if it's extremely important, then we know that the body has many safeguards for it. So what leaky gut is, it's when the intestinal barrier, which should be a very tight junction, but also have the ability to sample the outside world, decide if it's important or not, and then fend off invaders. So it's a barrier. We know that the main causes of leaky gut are bacterial overgrowth, SIBO, a protein called zonulin, which is a response to eating gluten, and foods that have been refined, which probably contain or probably have been sprayed with glyphosate, a chemical. We're learning a lot about leaky gut. So what leaky gut is, it's when your intestinal barrier becomes a little bit too permeable, meaning it allows too many things in and out, and it allows your body to overreact to the environment. So,
I like that.
That was a great Coles notes.
Literally, as you were saying, I always remember biology and literally picturing tight junctions between cells, because for those who don't have the same visual, all of our cells sit together, and as Dr. Brown mentioned, they need to either communicate with the internal world and the external world. And so when this barrier ends up actually being compromised, that's when we run into problems, and that's kind of what you just mentioned.
Definitely.
Exactly. And this is just the one last thing on leaky gut, because I think that is really kind of the future of a lot of things. When we sit there and look at it, there's a lot of research that shows that leaky gut, or intestinal permeability, is probably one of the reasons why there is an epidemic of autism. So we have children, in 1970 it was like 1 in 10,000. Right now it's like 1 in 80 or something kids have autism. And now we're starting to show that it's due to the intestinal health. And then on the flip side, we have other researchers showing that it's the cause of dementia. So now we realize that we can lower different hormones, like something called BDNF, which is brain-derived neurotrophic factor. And you start looking at this as a gastroenterologist, I'm like, wait a minute, we have cradle to grave going on here, and we're destroying ourselves. As a nation, we have the highest diabetes, the highest dementia, highest coronary artery disease, highest autism, all this stuff. So when you just kind of throw out, oh, tell me a little bit about leaky gut, I mean, you're going to get
I'm so
riled
sorry,
up, and I'm going to talk for hours.
You're right.
I think I need to have you back on here for another episode to talk about leaky gut.
We actually absolutely need to have you back, because leaky gut could be an entire other episode. And I'm sure our viewers, especially those who have struggled with areas of SIBO and leaky gut, would love to learn more. But I am actually most interested because you developed and you're passionate about creating a product that helps individuals with SIBO and bloating as a whole. Why Atrantil? So what is in it? What are the active components that make the magic work?
Can I take a quick step back and tell you, because I think one of the cool things that I think both of you would really appreciate here is how we actually came up with it.
Yes, love it. Tell us the love story.
Okay. So, as I was mentioning before, I was doing clinical research for a large pharmaceutical company, and that's when Dr. Pimentel was telling me that he had these mouse models which showed that if people were bloated and had constipation, that the antibiotics that we were using to treat them would not work. And the reason being that the type of organism creating the methane was a very primitive species in its own kingdom. So it wasn't really the type of bacteria that manufacturers were making antibiotics for. So I'm sitting there and I went, wow, that is just incredible. So I'm in my office drawing a dry erase board, and I'm writing out that methane, and I come down to methane is the final thing. I'm like, if we can figure out how to stop this methane, or this little guy that produces the methane, then we would have something really cool in our hands. And just about then, my research manager, her name was Brandy Scott, she comes in and she's like, what are you doing? And I said, well, I just got the phone with Dr. Pimentel, and he's telling me about how methane is the root cause of everything. And it's the weird how the universe connects things, and how you need to pay attention to whoever walks into your office because they may have the answer. She comes from a very interesting background. She had a master's in political science, and at one time she was working for a senator in Iowa, in the Midwest. And in Iowa, there's lots of cattle farming and stuff. She goes, that's so interesting. When I was doing policy writing for Senator so-and-so, we were trying to mandate what to put in cattle feeds to decrease methane production for the greenhouse effect, because cattle are burping methane, and that is actually affecting the ozone. And I just turned around and went, what?
That's so mind-blowing how the universe comes together to give a solution.
Yeah, and so that's when I went, wow. And so we looked at so I said, can you find all that literature? And she goes, oh yeah, I got mountains of it. This is pre-digital age, so it's just stacks of papers. And so.
No command find.
Yeah, so we ended up like sorting through it all for years. It's been a couple of years to kind of look at everything. We realized, wow, most of the hard, heavy lifting was already done for us. We realized that they were already feeding cattle these different things. And because of that, we realized that if you put embalsame, which is peppermint leaf, not the oil, very specific, not the oil, because the leaf is the polyphenol, but that's the least important thing. Okay. And you put it together with conker tree, and then the workhorse, which is quebracho colorado. Those three things work together to get rid of this little bug, this organism that's growing in these people, to get rid of the methane. And that's how we came up with it. Atrantil, 3 ingredients.
Very cool. So is it, yeah, there you go.
Got it.
Now the name makes sense. So I guess it's attacking sort of the root cause as well, on top of just providing symptom relief. Is that correct?
Yeah, so what we did is, with the 3 ingredients, essentially how it works is, when bacteria is growing where it shouldn't be, the first ingredient, the embalsame, the peppermint, calms everything down, and then it allows the second ingredient to come in, which is the real workhorse, which is the quebracho. The beauty of the quebracho is, and the reason why most people don't really understand this part, is because it's not in other supplements.
No, it's not.
This is the first time I had seen it as well.
When I did research on the product, I had to go in and do additional research on it because I wasn't familiar with it.
Exactly, and so that's one of the hurdles that we run into, which is we're the first people to figure this out and put it into a supplement, but you're eating it all the time. If you've ever had beer, if you've ever had wine, it's used all the time in our food source, and it's what's called a proanthocyanin tannin, and that is under the umbrella of polyphenols, and we'll talk about that in a second. So you have this large molecule that comes in, and what it does is it has a natural defense against Archaeobacter. It's from a very ancient tree. Super cool. It's built to fight this guy. So we have this organism growing in us, and we found this tree that has a natural defense against it, and we're already eating it on a regular basis. So the quebracho comes in, and it works by staying where it should. In other words, it doesn't get absorbed. So very safe, doesn't get absorbed. It soaks up the hydrogen, which starves the Archaeobacter, and then it actually weakens the wall of the Archaeobacter.
That's great. They're all working synergistically.
I love that.
That's
That is a sign of a good, that's
a
a sign of a good product, though, right? Where you have things that work synergistically together, and none of the ingredients that are just filler and unnecessary.
It is just 3 simple ingredients, and then the final synergistic exclamation point is the conker tree comes in. It does actually get rid of bacteria, but its main purpose is it has the ability to block the enzymatic process. The quebracho weakens the Archaeobacter, the conker tree comes in and stops the enzyme that allows the methane to be produced. So essentially, you said the word synergistically. 3 ingredients, 1 calms the area, 1 soaks up the hydrogen and the gas, which is what helps with the bloating immediately, and weakens the Archaeobacter. The third one shuts down the enzymatic process. And that's how, when we had the concept, it made total sense. We did put it through 2 clinical trials, both published in peer-reviewed journals, a randomized placebo-controlled trial, and then we did another one where we treated people that had basically failed everything else. And we have, remarkably good results. The bottom line is it's about 4 out of 5 people get much better. But you have to have the key ingredient, which is bloating after you eat. If you bloat after you eat, you stand about an 80 to 90% chance of getting better. So really exciting times, at least.
Amazing.
This product sounds great.
I
I
know.
want to take
So,
it.
Actually, I'm curious your thought of the play of where, because I've read a little bit of research as well as probiotics play within this field. So now, would you have someone take this product and probiotics? Would you do them separately? How would you approach that, and where do you stand on probiotics?
Okay, so this is a very moving, this is a moving target here. And I'm always continually adapting. So we mentioned earlier that the thing I really like about the sort of functional medicine type practice is that people are willing to adjust and adapt. When we initially came out, the protocol by Cedars-Sinai, which is what we were kind of following, which was no fermented foods, no probiotics at all, because the theory is that if you take probiotics and you have bacteria growing in your small
It's just
intestine,
helping it grow.
Yeah.
it'll actually help it grow. Fortunately, we keep open lines of communication with everybody, and whenever I go to meetings, I'll talk to people, and people that are familiar with my product will say, hey, I'm having really good results with this. So as far as probiotics, I'm here nor there on them. We do know that probiotics work wonderfully in a Petri dish. Like, they do amazing things. In clinical studies in humans, it's not quite as reproducible, but on individuals, it can be a home run. So I don't discount it at all. So on certain people, it's really good. I have changed my tune a little bit, and in people that don't do as well with Atrantil, I add Saccharomyces boulardii, and the reason for that is because it comes down to a naturopath doctor out of New Zealand actually opened my eyes to this. Super intelligent woman that was describing how secretory IgA gets boosted with Saccharomyces boulardii, and it would be a perfect complement. And it got real geeky, and it was really fun. But the bottom line is, all my patients already come to me on probiotics, and they're not feeling good. So I tell them, why don't we just wait on the probiotics, because it's not working anyways. Try this, and then we can try and reintroduce on the people that have already tried me.
Yeah, it's just a really interesting perspective, because I think like the first thing people usually think about with bloating is probiotics, and they could basically be making it worse.
This is where I say it's strain specific. So not every probiotic is equal. Anyways, for the sake of time, and because we're starting to geek out of this a little bit, thank you so much for being on the show today. I feel like everyone has a ton to learn, and I love the description of Atrantil that you have given us, the 3-packed punch, because I think a lot of people are familiar with peppermint as a herb to help soothe discomfort, but not with that kind of synergistic trio.
No, the horse chestnut and quebracho
I know,
is
and
very
I love that when you use 3 natural substances such as that, you don't get the side effects that come with traditional pharmaceuticals. So I love that, and I love that you're passionate about this. We definitely have to get you back on the show. Promise
so
us
much
you'll
to
come
geek
back.
out about.
So,
I know.
So one of the things that's like really cool to geek out about that you're going to see a whole lot of, Alina, you're going to see a ton of this, is that the role of polyphenols, these proanthocyanins and these flavonoids, what we're learning a lot about is that our own colonic bacteria takes these polyphenols and then they produce anti-inflammatory things for us. So another geeky, a whole show on polyphenols.
So many shows.
I love polyphenols. I'm also a tea junkie.
I loved what you said. What did you say? You said, don't eat colorless food. So what I do is
dead food.
Yeah, dead food. Whenever I take my staff out to lunch, if we go to like a buffet, I'm like, whoever has the most colorful plate wins, because that means you're eating the most polyphenols.
That's hilarious.
That's awesome.
Okay.
And guys, we also just had a question. Donna's actually wondering, where do you get this product? So in the description of this video, you're going to see a link. That link is actually going to bring you to a whole article teaching you a little bit more about it, and a link of where to purchase the product as well. So that's just right in the video description. But Dr. Brown, thank you so much for joining us today. And hopefully we talk to you again soon.
Oh, we definitely
I would
will.
love
There's
to.
lots of geeking to do.
We'll have to get you here in person next time. We'll fly you out to Toronto.
I've heard it's a great city. I've actually never been.
Oh my gosh,
It is
stop.
fantastic.
Okay, we can talk about that. Okay, take it easy, Dr. Brown. Thank you again so much for coming on.
Thank you.
Nadia, thank you so much. Wonderful being on.
Amazing. We'll talk to you soon. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Okay, guys, so not only did we go through the whole spectrum of different types of bloating, what causes bloating, the difference between water retention and bloating, as well as SIBO, which is really interesting. And I love, just to reiterate, if you feel bloated after you eat, this conversation
the
is
takeaway.
For you. This is the takeaway. So take a look. If we missed your comment, I'm so sorry, because we were so interested in
We were
talking
geeking out too much.
I know. But if you guys have any additional questions about the product, or any questions for Dr. Brown or Alina, myself, message us, let us know.
We'll be there.
You can also email us at community@theheartysoul.com.
Yeah.
But that's about it.
That's
Thank you
about
guys
it. Thank you so
for
much.
tuning in. If you loved what you saw, make sure that you give us a like or a love.
Love. Lots of
Share
loves.
it. Feel free to share.
Yeah.
And we will be here again in
The
2
following
weeks.
week.
Yeah, so 2 weeks from now, Tuesday, 7 p.m. We'll see
Eastern
you guys
Standard
then.
Time. All right. See you guys. Bye.
Bye. Hey,
guys.
YouTube! Thank you so much for tuning in today's episode.
And if you liked what you watched, please be sure to subscribe to our channel.
Yes, and if you had any questions or comments, you can just hit us up below. You can also give us a like. And if you missed last week's episode, you can see that right over here.
And if you do want to see more of our previous episodes, you can catch them all over here. And also, be sure to tune in every Thursday at 10 a.m. for our other show, Real Food Live. Thank you so much, guys. Bye.